Hello and welcome back. It's time for another long-form video where I am once again working on this Kris Kommedies collab that I've penciled, I've inked, as you can see back here, and now it's time to work on the colors. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So as you can see, I've already kind of laid out the flats, and these colors aren't going to remain the same. In fact, I would be surprised if any of them stay the colors that they are. But what I want to do is try to make a nice harmonizing, or a nice piece where all the colors kind of harmonize together. And I'm thinking of using a lot of greens and blues to try to work with the colors that I have here for the character as well as the tentacles. So let's go ahead and let's get started. I think what I'm going to do is start off by kind of just adding a rough bit of shading over everything, or at least was the character to start off with. And what this is essentially is just a multiply layer with like a hard brush. So very basic, and with I'm not even really looking to add any kind of pressure sensitivity or anything at this point. I just want that hard edged shaded look, because this is going to be kind of like shaded like how you would a comic book, because that's the style I've been working in for a while now, and I really kind of enjoy that look. I'm shading with like kind of this gray here because I don't want it to be completely blacked out, because I do want a good idea of what I'm shading and what I'm not, while still having that color, the original color leastwise, shine through. Now some of you may be wondering why the character here is colored the way that he is, and that is actually because these are the original colors of the minifigure that it's based on. So if you haven't watched the previous long form videos with this piece in it, this is a commission piece for Kris Kommedies, a good friend of mine and a fellow YouTuber who's recently hit quite a milestone in his followers. I believe he's reached 5K subscribers, and he's a Lego stop-motion animator, and one of his biggest videos, or stop-motion videos, was a piece called the Kraken, and in that a character, a Lego, minifigure, of course, ascends a ladder to face the Kraken, or ascends a flagpole, I should say. And it's a very cinematic moment. It's very, very cool, and he wanted that captured in kind of a comic book style, or kind of in a way that I'm, known for and comfortable with working. So we've, of course, been working on this piece now for a bit, and I've based this character off of the minifigure in the original animation. And of course I've had to kind of make it a little bit more realistic while still leaving some things obscure. For instance, the face in the on the minifigure is just the smiley face, but here on the here in the illustration, I want him to have a little bit of definition without really giving him too much, identity. So you can kind of imagine what his features are without having to see them. And I think that kind of lets the character be a little closer to his original minifigure counterpart, as opposed to just giving him a face or giving him a smiley face. I guess I could have done that, but so here I'm trying to get these graphic shapes in here, and the whole point is kind of telling the audience what is and is not shaded without really rendering out anything in this stage. And I'm doing this on a layer above everything else so that when I do go into shade, I can just select this layer for the shading and then fill in what my shading color is going to be, and then begin to soften some of the transitions as we have different textures or different materials. Or maybe even different light sources. But this is a good way to get the idea of kind of how you want the piece lit. And we've already kind of done this with the inking layer. But now we want to make sure that we just fully enhance this piece and kind of make it look a little bit more 3D. And I like using a hard brush like this just because I don't get lost or stuck thinking about, oh, well, what about this or what about that, for my edges and for, you know, my rendering. That's not important to me at this stage. I try to be bold as I can with where I'm placing these shadows and really letting the light kind of have to fight for dominance in this piece. Because one, it's at night, and for two, I kind of like that darker shaded Mick Mignola kind of influenced work. And worst comes to worst, I can always boost the lights fairly easy. I can also boost the darks, but I prefer working from a dark piece into a lighter piece. I'm trying to get better about coloring my artwork, because I feel like there's a lot of style that I'm putting out that when I'm penciling and when I'm inking, and a lot of research that goes into that, but then when I sit down to color, I don't really have, I feel like, as much confidence. That's partially why I'm recording, because now I kind of have to put a level of work into not only the piece but into the video as well to make sure both look good. But yeah, I kind of wish that there was, in my art style right now, a little bit more work and conscious towards the coloring stage, as opposed to right now where it's like, yes, I prepare for the coloring stage. It's not as bad as it has been, but I still am not as, I don't know, I don't feel as informed or as confident. And I wish that wasn't the case. I wish that I could just walk in like I do with inking or like I do with penciling and just be like, yep, I know this is going to be a good piece because I have, you know, this much practice and this much, you know, these many hours in the bag. And I think what I need to do for that is start downloading comic book pages and other comic book covers of the style that I'm used to, you know, drawing from and learning from, you know, inking and penciling, and taking those after they've been inked and then scanning them or getting them saved to my computer and then just coloring them. And that would probably help. And that's something that anyone can do. Like a lot of times, and I'm sure I've said this a lot before, but I'll say it again. You can go on like comic pages, auction websites is like some of my favorite places to go, and you can take screenshots or even save images of these professionally done artworks, and then you can practice with them. I go there all the time to look for pencils by artists that I know and like, so that then to practice their style, I just ink over what they've done. Like I try to act like a professional inker who's been assigned that artist's work to work on. And it's the same with penciling. I can get somebody's pencils and I can try to recreate them. And it should be the same for coloring, but I have to admit that is not something that I've done yet. And I should do. In fact, I probably should make a video about that, because that would be good for me to kind of have that pressure to study, while also, you know, being honest with myself and no, I don't know everything about coloring and I need to get better. Swallow some of that pride. Alright. Sometimes it's pride, sometimes it's all out just fear. I think in my case it's a little bit of, probably a little bit of both. Alright, so there's my shade. Let's go ahead and add my lights. Lights are a little harder to do, but I'm going to try to do it with a really light gray and then a screen. Nope, that doesn't really work, does it? Let me drop the opacity. I did it with an overlay. It kind of works, I don't love it. Not as big of a fan of plotting out where all my lights will go, or all my highlights. I don't think it looks as good or helps me as much. I feel like the highlights are fairly obvious in most cases, but I say that and my artwork still kind of sucks, so I guess I'll just have to get over it. Keep thinking about it and keep practicing anyway. I feel like it's really easy, especially if you're working in something that you're not as familiar with. Like for me in coloring, which is, fairly obvious. Every time I sit down to do a video where I'm coloring, I'm like, I don't want to talk about this, or I don't want to, you know, go over it. That's just because I'm not as confident with it. I wouldn't say I'm as bad as I used to be, but I am definitely more hesitant to break out, you know, those skills. And what's funny is like, if I were to sit down and paint this piece, say in a traditional sense, like if we were here doing this with paintbrush and ink and such, I probably would have a lot more confidence. But I don't know what it is about every time I sit down to do this kind of style of coloring where like things just, like digital illustrations where they're a lot more complex like this with characters and stuff are difficult for me. But like if it's just like a landscape or whatever, that's my happy place. That's why I don't do a lot of landscapes, because I feel like I wouldn't be able to. It's kind of my area, at least that's how I treated it before, and I'm trying to kind of break into that a little bit more and kind of bring some of that into my a little more to the forefront, because I do like painting traditionally and I do like working like that. I kind of stopped developing that skill just because it made me happy to do it and I didn't want to ruin it. Whereas like when I was learning how to do digital illustration, I was learning how to do all this other stuff, like it was grueling and it was difficult and I loved it, but I also knew that like with that came like a certain level of difficulty and of work that I had to really put in and really have to study and practice hard. So yeah, when I was, you know, working with inking, working really hard, trying to figure out penciling, working really hard. Coloring, same deal. But traditional painting has always been something that's just been very, very fun to me, and I'd like to do more of it. Will I? I don't know. It's hard to say. Okay, I'd say that'd be pretty alright. I think I'll... let's do some highlights on the tentacles first of the Kraken. So... it's pretty dark as is, so I think the highlights are really what's going to make these pop and help me as I'm thinking through my composition. So let's go ahead, let's select this. Let's take it all the way up there, yeah. That's good. And then we'll have a hard light. And we'll just kind of begin the process of illuminating these bits. And again, all this is a guideline and kind of a map for myself. And these bits are quite heavily shaded already with ink, so I'm not as worried about where I'm going to put the shadows. I probably still will put a bit of a map down, but I would prefer we focus on the highlights for now. And translating like this stuff from Lego was a lot more fun than I thought it would be, because I thought it would be a lot more difficult. And it, you know, I won't say it was just a walk in the park, but it was like Kris Kommedies' work is really a cinematic quality to it in this this short he's done. So going through and finding you know, the moment he had commissioned me for, and seeing it and seeing the movement and seeing how the Kraken kind of was attacking the ship and how the figures were reacting to it, and this particular moment was just kind of, you know, neat and kind of special, because it wasn't like it was a lot less stiff than I expected it to be. I could kind of see or I hope I saw what he was conveying in that scene and directing, because that's, you know, you as an animator, you really are a director. You have to get your point across to your viewers as best you can, and sometimes that's difficult, especially when, you know, your actors don't have joints, you know, as minifigures don't. But Kris has done a very good job, and he's very, very talented. And I'm not just saying that because he's my friend or because he's, you know, paying me to do this. He's not paying me to give him compliments, that's for sure. But I will say, he is very talented. He's very good at what he does. So yeah, definitely go support him if you haven't already. Become a part of his crew. Get it, crew? Because pirates. Okay. I'm kind of picking and choosing which bits of these tendrils to highlight here where it gets more complicated. That's just kind of to add to the visual noise and busyness down here. But I don't need every single one to be fully fleshed out. The big general idea here with this one is we want the eye to flow up this tentacle to the eye level here and make sure that kind of here, let me actually draw it out. So when I was planning out this piece, the idea was for the eye flow essentially to go up this tentacle here and then kind of point towards the face, and then you could go down the sword and you get pointed kind of back up with this tentacle around the moon, and then right back down here, right back here. So you'd have this kind of like circular composition all around our main character. And really that's what you want, because you don't want to distract your viewers with a bunch of crazy things. Even though this is a complicated, you know, creature with a lot of extra detail, you don't want that to become, you know, and it's very integral to this composition, but it is not the main thing in the composition. The main thing in the composition is our hero here. So as I'm working, I'm making sure that even in the coloring stage, I want the highlights, and I want the areas with most brilliant contrast to really focus in on our main character and his, you know, fight against our secondary element, which in this case is the Kraken. And you know, that's why the moon is drawn the way it is, and that's why the flag is drawn the way it is. So it's like, yeah, there's a lot of details in there, but I've also blacked out a lot of it with the, you know, with my ink pen. And in the same way, I will go through and I will probably be less inclined to shade and color those areas with a lot of detail or a lot of, you know, complex color shifting or whatever, because it's not the main thing. It's not the main attraction. Nice. It's looking slimy. That's what I wanted it to be, and now that it is, I'm very happy. Don't take that out of context. Don't take that out of context. Alright, let's go ahead and do the highlights here. Or light. And let's do something like that. Actually, for this, I want to go up like so. A little bit more light. There it is. And we're just hitting the highest high points of this flag to really sell its billowing mass in these sea winds out on the high seas. It's funny because this is the second pirate I've had to draw within the past couple months. Like, I want to say, like, last month, like, not too long ago, I had to draw another pirate. And I had also received this commission at the same time, but I got that one a little bit, you know, sooner than this one. But as soon as I heard that I was doing 2 pirates, I'm like, you know, I don't know if this is going to become my thing or not, but I think it'd be really funny if I did become just the guy who draws pirates and eventually just, like, psych everybody out. Be like, hey, can you draw a pirate? Be like, yeah, sure. And then just draw, like, a guy on his laptop pirating, like, Top Gun or something. I know it's lame, but, like, that's, like, what I was thinking of. Like, everybody's just like, oh, yeah, you got, you know, this pirate to do and, you know, Captain Nimbus and all that. And I was like, yeah, okay. But what if he was, like, just, like, a lame pirate? Like, pirating videos. Alright. I'm not going to shade the moon kind of like this because I don't really need a map because it's a background element. It's going to be kind of flat. What I do want to do is have a little bit of a hint of a background. Just because I know that I'm going to have almost like a vignette. What I like to do for this is usually pull out some abstract brushes and kind of just make some shapes. I also have these mood brushes by Ahmed Rawi. I don't know where I got them. I guess Ahmed Rawi. And what I like about these is, like, they kind of are like these rough, just textured blocks. And you can go in and, of course, adjust, like, the color dynamics and make the hue jitter a bit more, which is usually what I do. And what I'm going to do is just kind of, like, block in, like, a rough kind of shape of where I think I want the majority of the background color to be, because I think I'll go in and I'll actually make it kind of like cloudy, because I think that would be kind of cool. Although this kind of does look neat, like it's like a illustration or it's on an old map or something. And then I'll usually go in and I'll just kind of just mess with the colors in the hue saturation. And if I've done it right, I can usually get a pretty good, look at kind of what I want. So I know, like, I'm gonna have a lot of dark sky back here. Or a lot of dark elements in the foreground, so I don't want a dark sky. I want it to be light, but I don't want it to be, like, too light, because it still needs to be dark. So what I think I'm going to do is one of the things that I really like to do, especially because of, you know, right now, AI art is kind of everywhere, and it's kind of taking over. And it's hard to tell what is and isn't made by artists anymore. But generally speaking, you can kind of tell, especially if you've been in the game a while. And one of the things I like to do is, while I'm working on color, harmonies, and such like that, is I will look up some of the landscapes and stuff that I've got on hand. And some of them are AI. And, you know, I'm not ashamed to say that I may steal some of the color compositions from them. And I may look at them and I may say, oh yeah, I like that, it's mine now. Because as it stands, you know, they can't do anything about it. If they want to steal from me, I can steal from them. That's how that goes. And even if it was an actual artist, if you know how to reference something and you know how to, you know, pull, let's say, maybe not even steal from those artists that are, you know, you look up to, or those artists that may have skills that you don't, you can really level up your work and really begin to find yourself at a better skill level than maybe what you were before. And AI art is absolutely no exception to that. That's why, you know, a lot of times it's not great, so it's not worth stealing, in my opinion. But one thing that I've noticed is I really like it when I can see a texture that they're using, or a certain photo that maybe they've crushed in a way that to make it look like art. I can say, and then kind of break it apart in my head, and then actually put thought behind that as to where I want that, rather than what the, you know, what AI will do is just kind of put whatever amounts of detail or whatever elements it thinks, you know, will make you go, ooh, you know, at the final. It's just, it's kind of pathetic, honestly. I've yet to see a piece of AI artwork that's really made me go, oh no, we artists are screwed. Mostly I've just seen stuff that's like, it's not that great, I could do better here, let me try. And if you want to count that as being inspired by AI art, then sure, you know, you can call it that, I guess. Inspired meaning like, I can do better than that. Which I think that's a good place to be. I think a lot of people, and artists in general, can get this way. And I understand why they get this way. But like, we can be really insecure about our art, because that was the one thing that we had, and probably were very secure in the fact that, you know, nobody can draw this like me, and then now you have a machine that can study you and kind of figure out a version of that to where it's rather close. And I feel like a lot of people are kind of intimidated by that. And I'm not anti-AI. I'm not like fully, anyone that uses AI is dead to me and isn't a real artist or whatever. You know, I'm not going to comment on that. Let's put it that way. I'm not going to turn this into a big stupid debate, because I don't think that's necessary. I have opinions on it. Some of them are rather strong opinions, but they're not really, I think, worth sharing. But what I will say is, you shouldn't feel intimidated, and you shouldn't feel lesser because a machine can kind of copy you. Because if you look at it, it really can't. And that's the short version of that. If you want the long version of that, you're gonna have to talk to me in person, because I'd rather not spread my uninformed, half-baked opinion, or even full-baked opinion on this kind of controversy all over the internet, because I don't think it's worth it. And besides, as soon as you say AI in a video about art, you get like a different kind of a different crowd than maybe what I'm trying to rally. I'm not trying to start a fight or, you know, cause anything. Anyway, that being said, I've kind of referenced a piece that I believe is AI, just based on a couple of key features. And I've kind of stolen kind of the gradient that they have in the sky. I'm not going to show the piece just in case I'm wrong, because I don't want to insult an artist who actually has put in a lot of work. But I'm I'm like 99.9% sure that it's from a computer. But again, stealing like an artist is something that I've been doing for a while. Ever since I learned how to photo bash. I kind of like the texture for that. I might simplify it a bit more as we go on, but for right now it's gonna work for this piece. So let's go ahead and let's get into actually shading this pirate. And I'm a little bit, not nervous, but I'm apprehensive, we'll say. I'm not as excited as I'd like to be. I'd like to be a bit more excited about working on something than I am right now. But there's only so much of that I can manufacture right now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this hard round brush and I'm going to modify it a little bit. So actually, I think I'll just take the soft round and I'll lessen the smoothing a bit. Where was I going to do? Transfer, I believe. Don't like it. Gonna use that other brush that I've already got saved. I think I like that better. Yep. Alright. I need that, but maybe a little bit more red. Not quite what I'm going for. Let me get a better reference of skin tone that I like. I thought about showing the references that I'm looking at while I work. I kind of like that idea, but at the same time, I also don't love the idea of having just a bunch of artwork that isn't mine. I say that and I'm kind of a hypocrite on that because in my videos I will have like a lot of like just stuff on the screen all the time that isn't mine, like videos and clips and stuff like that. But at the same time, there's like a certain there's a part of me that I'm not happy with when I show artwork that isn't mine in my videos without proper credit, and like I'm using I don't really have the time to go through and look up all the credit, so I'm just gonna try to keep it as artist friendly, we'll say, or as credit friendly as possible by just not showing it. Which is unfortunate because it's some seriously good art sometimes. Most of the times, we'll say. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select all that, add my kind of dark shading layer there. It's about as dark as I want it to go. And that might go darker, but that's on the skin layer there. And the skin layer is always the hardest. It's always more complicated because you've got a lot more transitional colors. Nice thing though is since we're working on a male figure, we can have a lot more hard edges, and it won't look bad, as opposed to like with female faces, you want to have a nice balance between your hard edges and your soft edges. Generally with feminine faces, you want more soft edges. There are of course exceptions to this, but in general that's what I find to be the case for like your most appealing characters and the characters that read the best as far as whether they're masculine or feminine. And that's not to say that like you can't have, you know, soft edges. I mean, I'm working on soft edge right here on a obviously masculine face, but I am also making sure that like when I go over to this nose, I have like this hard edge here that really, you know, shows off his more chiseled features. Sometimes I see artists that really want to have like a tough female character, and they kind of ignore the soft edges and just go in with all the hard edges. I think that that's a mistake, because even characters like, you know, that are hardened or are more tough, like I'm thinking of Furiosa from Mad Max Fury Road. Obviously, you know, she's not an illustration, but were you to illustrate her, you have to note like the amount of humanity and the amount of like softness in like certain features. So like her eyes, for example, are like the first thing that I thought of. It's like she's got these, you know, if I'm not mistaken, these blue eyes that kind of show a bit of her soul. And then she's also has in the I'm thinking specifically in Mad Max, like obviously she is still, you know, female. She's if I'm correct, played by a ballerina, and so yes, while she is, you know, covered in dirt and she is carrying, you know, large weaponry, or she's, you know, has grease or you know, war paint on her face, she still has like the soft feminine attributes in her body and in her face and whatnot, and in her expressions even. And yet no one would doubt that she is a very strong character in that film. So I think personally, you know, and even just for contrast's sake, that's like some of the I was designing a character recently, and it was a barbarian class character for a Dungeons and Dragons game, and I wanted her to be kind of a take on, like, kind of a challenge to that mentality that's like, it's a barbarian, so she has to have, like, you know, hard edges, and she has to be, you know, tough, and she has to look manly. I'm like, she doesn't have to be like a man or have manly characteristics or hard edges to look like a strong character. And so I remember working on that character and showing off her, you know, her more feminine attributes, and really like pushing kind of I think one of the references that I used was Kate from Fallout 4, where yes, she is this brawler, yes, she's this, you know, foul mouth enforcer kind of character, but she also is still very much, you know, feminine. And I think it's a great disservice to your character design to make your strong, quote unquote, strong female characters just, you know, a stand-in for a man. And that's for anything, but especially in illustration, if you want to have a character that is interesting and then also unique, while still having them be female, you should lean into the female attributes and some of the things that a male character in that role would not be able to have. And there's a whole design thing that I could go into that, but I don't think it's... I think the point carries. Light, and I'm going to select this lightest here and put a little bit more yellow in it. And I'm just gonna, with a soft brush now, go in and just kind of add these highlight, and then Control-Shift-H or Control-Alt-H. How do I hide the marching ants? Oh, I forget the shortcut. Hide. Hide. Oh, it's just Control-H. There we go. I'd say that's not too terrible. I might punch the shadows a bit more, but I think that's not too bad for the skin layer, all things considered. Alright, shut that off, get our normal size back, and then let's go ahead and let's move on to the next layer. Do I want to do the shirt? Let's do the shirt. Okay. Shade. I'm going to pick this dark color here. And actually, I'll let it be a little bit blue. And some of this will work and some of it won't work because I've got to go in and I've got to shade a different color for the red, but you know, it is what it is. Okay. Here for the red, I'm gonna go in there and shade a little bit differently. There we go. So working with this striped shirt has really kind of been like a bit of a challenge. This is a Lego piece that I actually know quite well because I think I used to have one, and I think I still have it somewhere. But it's just this red and white shirt that's striped, and I like it. I think it's a neat piece. It's just not one that's like generally I've had to think about. I don't usually design characters with stripes in any shape, form, or fashion. I don't know why, I just don't seem to find places for them. So this is like an aspect of a challenge that I noticed when I came into design the character, as well as, you know, work it into the really the clothing design, the costume, and then also the color composition and whatnot, because it's like it can be kind of almost. I'm gonna clean up some of these straight lines here, they're bothering me. But it really is kind of like one of those aspects that, like, you know, do you leave it in for authenticity or do you remove it? And I really wanted to keep it because I really felt like it was an important aspect of the character and of the original minifigure. So I remember I was working on, you know, finding ways to, when I was designing the costume, to really show, you know, a happy medium between the minifigure originally, you know, who has like a blue coat and a you know, this shirt underneath of it. But one of the things that I kind of stumbled upon happily was like, well, the minifigure's coat stops at his waist, but that's just because he's a minifigure. I don't have to do that. That's, you know, those rules don't apply. So I remember when I got rid of that, and then suddenly the minifigure could have a long coat. I'm like, well, that's kind of cool, because then that kind of shows gives a little bit more story to the figure. You know, maybe he's like a first mate and he's got like this, you know, old shirt underneath, and then like maybe the captain has that he used to serve under, who wore this big billowed cloak, passed it on to him after, you know, he left the sea, or maybe after he got eaten by the Kraken or something like that. And I kind of like that. I like the idea and the flow of that much better than a lot of the shorter jackets that I did. So when I went to draw it, I extended the jacket and really was happy with the results. So hence why this guy's got this shirt. Alright, so that's good. Back to the shirt layer. Give us a little bit more yellow from the moonlight, actually. Generally what I like to do when I'm highlighting is I grab the color that I've used, and then, or that I want for the light, and then I will throw it on top of the color with like just a ever so slight light opacity, and then select whatever that is and call that what the color is, as it is affected by what the light's color is as it is affected by the color of the material or the object that it's on. And essentially that's kind of how color works. But yeah, it's not bad. I'm gonna add a few more well, I've kind of already done that. So let's go ahead and let's move up to the coat, the second most scary part of this drawing. Not because it's difficult, just because like it's rather important that I get it right. Turn off the opacity. So that's just a solid color that we're dropping in here. It needs to go a bit darker. There we go. Oh. That's my bad. Okay, hold on. I did not lock the opacity on that, did I? Or the transparency. Okay, let's try this again. Select the shades. Now if you drop this on there, I bet it looks a lot better. Yeah. Good job. Just to show you the amount of stupidness one person can still retain after years of using Photoshop and years of painting almost every day. Get the lights in, because that's, I think, what we're really missing here. It's a little too dark overall. It's coming off as leather, which is good, but I think it's coming off a little bit too strong or a little bit too tight. I need to loosen it up a little bit. So we're just gonna kind of go in at like this middle between our highlight and our shadow color. at the music from that one movie that's been going about. K-pop Demon Hunters, I think. Or is it Hunters? No, it's, I think K-pop Demon Hunters, but the band is called Hunters, or Huntrix, whatever. I'm not a fan of K-pop, but I do like the direction Sony Animation's going. And I think they did a pretty good job on that movie. I wish the character, like, don't get me wrong, it's a very solid movie. I think, however, there was a bit of lack of character development that I kind of would have liked to see. And some of the characters just aren't important at all. And I don't want to give a full review of it, but just like the main antagonist, or I guess not the main antagonist, but the one that we see more often than the main antagonist. He's like a very interesting character. I think they did a really good job with his, you know, backstory and such, but then they just kind of dropped him off at the very end. And if you've seen it, you know what I mean. But like, yeah, his fate is rather annoying to me, in the sense of like, it's just like kind of a done-in song and not really well done. And again, this is where people say, well, that movie wasn't, you know, made for you, it was made for K-pop fans and people that like are, you know, or kids or whatever. And I'm like, on one hand, yes. On the other hand, no, because it's Sony Animation, and they've been putting out some very cross-generational, shall we say, work recently that has done very good. And I think that was the thing that really got me drawn to the work, or the movie itself, was the work that they put in, and the animation. And in general, I think they did a good job overall with the storytelling. I felt like the third act really was like not as powerful as and not as well executed as the rest. And that's saying something, because it's like I still consider this a very good movie as far as animation goes, and in general storytelling goes. I would say it's pretty good. But well, like I said, I don't want to give a whole thing on it, but like I do like the fact that, like, my critique is I wanted to see more out of it, versus like most of the other films that I've seen of this year that I did not like. It's like, yeah, no, nothing was good about it, or like it was 100% crap, or like they didn't have, you know, very many, if any, you know, qualities that were fun or interesting. A lot of times it's just like, yeah, this is like a spiteful movie made to deconstruct something that I like. And it's, you know, that wasn't the case with this, and I appreciate that. I think it was made with fans involved, with fans in mind, and that's how it should be. So good job, Sony Animation and K-pop Demon Hunters. I know you were just waiting for my endorsement, so there it is. Oh man, the character design in that, though, that's some peak. Some very good work being done, because they were all like distinct from each other, and like you could tell what their whole deal was. That's visual storytelling, which is a huge thing for me. That was like one of the things like we talked about constantly. We would look at, and I've ranted about that on this, so I don't need to go into it. But we you know, we would talk about The Incredibles, or we would talk about Up, or other movies where Disney and Pixar really used to be the kings of character design. And now everything's just the bean mouth character, which doesn't really work for 3D animation. I think for 2D animation it works okay. I think like Gravity Falls did pretty good with it. I think the Cuphead show had something similar to that. I might be wrong. I don't know. Maybe they didn't have bean mouths, but with the everything right now in 3D world looks like Steven Universe. I think that's just because a lot of the artists working in animation right now were inspired by that show, because it was, you know, kind of independent, and it was one of those, you know, stories where, you know, you kind of come out of nowhere and you, I guess, have a hit. I don't really know anything about Steven Universe. I don't really like the character design, I will say, if I can just be blunt without riling up everybody, although I know I already have. I think my biggest problem is just like I could never get past like the color design. It wasn't my favorite. That's saying something like from me who is bad at color design. Like I never really liked anything I saw from the show, which is very little. So it's like, I think maybe about like 20 minutes of footage taken from like maybe a dozen things people have sent me over the years, and I've never just been like, oh wow, I have to see, you know, this show, or I have to research it or whatever. That's never been the case with this. So again, I don't hate the show because I don't know anything about the show. I can say, however, it's we'll just say it's not one of my great inspirations, but it seems to be one of the inspirations for a lot of animators, which, okay, that's good that you're getting, you know, motivated to animate, but I think what's important to note is that it does use the designs that it has in the medium of 2D animation, which is very different from the medium of 3D animation. And 3D animation's a whole, like, another ballpark. I've worked with a little bit of 3D. I've primarily worked in, like, kind of that middle ground in, like, 2.5D, where we're not drawing every frame, but, like, we are working with, like, 3D cameras with 2D. So I guess it's technically 2D, but, like, I kind of call it 2.5D. And also, I'm not really animating. I'm actually mostly rigging, although I have animated. So I guess currently I am not animating. I have animated in 2D, so let's get that straight. But yeah, and the little animation that I've done in 3D is very different. It's a very different look into the world of motion and into the world of storytelling in general. So I think that if you're trying to bring 2D concepts into 3D, yes, that is good in most cases. However, unfortunately, some of those things don't work as well. Especially, like, I feel like for Disney and Pixar. I digress. I feel like I've talked about Disney and Pixar for the past 4 or 5 videos where I'm just sitting and talking and, like, talking out, like, whatever pops in my head. So when I go to make reels, I'm probably just gonna have a huge, gigantic Disney rant, and I'm gonna be like, ugh, I don't want to hate that much on Disney, even though they've kind of had a major losing streak recently. That's kind of hard to ignore. And normally I would like to rant about them, but it's not really the purpose of the channel. Again, if you know me and you can meet me in real life and you want to talk about this stuff, just walk up to me and talk about this stuff. If you don't know me, well, I guess we're not talking about this stuff. Oh well. The perks of being my friend and knowing me in real life, as opposed to the many Disadvantages of getting to know me exclusively on YouTube. Or I can edit myself to look smarter than I actually am. Not in this video though, because this is unedited me working on stuff for hours. Why is that like that? Is that just like that? That's just like that. Okay, let me fix that. Yeah, now it's not like that. What? Why is that like that? What? Oh, because I shut it off. Some top tier smooth brain stuff going on around here. Alright, let's fix this because this looks atrocious. The cool thing about working with metal in when it comes to coloring is like generally it's about the same. Like you can go really in depth and have like some super realistic metallic stuff. In fact, like if you want to get into hyperrealism, working with metallic stuff is like where you should start. I remember I painted a sword once in watercolor and I wound up actually getting I think an A on the painting because we were supposed to paint hyper realistic, as realistic as we could get it. And I remember like everybody was like, the project was suggested, you know, you work on it in oil or you work on it in acrylic. And I had just, you know, when I learned how to paint, it's a long story, but basically I had almost failed my first painting class because I didn't know color theory at all. So like oil didn't have a really good relationship with acrylic. Same deal. Wasn't good at either. And I had just, you know, this was painting 2, and we had just been introduced to watercolor, and finally, like, I was actually starting to get painting in general, and I was really happy. I was really excited about that because I thought I was an absolute failure. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me because I thought I was malfunctioning, but in reality, there was another situation going on where my schedule had basically omitted the color theory class completely because I as it's probably obvious, I'm not great at color theory. But yeah, so I didn't have that. So then when I went to do this project, and I had essentially just like gotten up to the speed of where I should have been last semester, and I see now it's like, okay, now use acrylic or oil to paint this, you know, hyper realistically. I'm like, can I use watercolor? Because for some reason watercolor and I just clicked. Like we got along. Like, you know those people that like you meet in life sometimes that like maybe you're just like standing in line and you say something that's like you think is like kind of funny but not, you know, only to like maybe you, and like the person behind you, the person in front of you is just like, you know, they kind of laugh too and they kind of like think it's funny, but they like not in like a dumb way or anything, but they also just like maybe riff off of that and like add to it, and then like immediately like this is my best friend. Like suddenly you have somebody who like kind of gets you, even if you don't know who they are, and maybe you'll never see them again, but like you'll always remember that guy that, you know, was in line and kind of laughed at your joke and added to it. You're like, oh, we could start a podcast together. We could, you know, spend years and years, you know, working on our comedy gig, and become, you know, like the next Good Mythical Morning, and all of this, and then like you look up and it's your turn in line and they're gone forever, and you're like, oh. Well, that's what watercolor was to me, except for it didn't walk away in line. It's stuck around. And I asked my teacher, I remember I was like, hey, can I paint this sword in watercolor? And he was like, yeah, well, it's going to be difficult. And I wound up doing it, and it really, really turned out well. I mean, like, I had to do a little test first, and I remember when I turned in the little test painting that I had done for it, he was like, nope, this is like really well done, good job, you should keep doing this. And like it wasn't flawless, but like it was like it was the hugest thing for me, just because like I, you know, had almost failed, you know, the first version of this class, and so now I'm in the second one, and the teacher's telling me I'm doing a good job. Suddenly I'm like, that's like, I never thought I'd get here, and now I'm here. So that was like one of my favorite paintings for the longest time. I think I still have it somewhere. 'Cause I don't think I wound up selling that one. I did wind up selling like a few of the paintings that I did in school, because some people in my life were like, oh, you should sell these. You know, I would buy them. I'm like, okay. And then like turns out they did buy them, and I was like, oh, okay. Sometimes, you know, that happens. That's pretty cool when it does. Doesn't happen a lot to me. I'm not like a huge art or painting seller, or I don't even know what you would call that. Yeah, I want to get back into painting traditionally, but there's a part of me that also likes this kind of fantasy and sci-fi stuff that I do. And I've tried to paint traditionally sci-fi and fantasy stuff, and I never fully get to where I want. And I think part of that is just like I never really put in the time to fully explore that and fully devote myself to it. Because I always saw it as like, it was always a school project or whatever. I never really thought, oh, you know, I'll paint sci-fi landscapes or fantasy characters in my paintings. I would just paint nice paintings. And I think it would be good for me to study and to work harder in bringing some of those things that I can't observe into my painting work. Because that's the thing with the painting work I have now, a lot of it is based off of observation. That's why I like it so much. You go outside and you sit under a tree for hours and paint what's in front of you. You can watch the sun go down, and you know, rough in the trees and stuff like that, so then by the time the sun gets to like the perfect spot, you're ready to throw in those splashes of colors that, you know, cameras can only dream of capturing. And that's real artwork that takes a lot of time and talent, and that's something that I greatly enjoy pursuing. Yeah, I need to, I think, bring the realm of fantasy into that a little bit, so I can play a little bit in that world, because that's the thing when you learn, generally in art school, or at least was the art school that experience I had, was you learn the fundamentals and you learn, you know, traditional observation methods, and you learn all of that, and it's very, very rigid. It's not fun until you know you have your own projects and you have your own chance to play in that world and to really begin injecting your ideas and injecting your thoughts and your dreams and your excitements and the things that interest you. And I don't know, for some reason I didn't do that in school. I guess it was because I was just so far behind, or felt so far behind when it came to painting, that by the time I had done all my painting stuff, all my painting courses, and got into the digital courses, I was, you know, I did all my fantasy work in digital. But now I see it's probably time that I branch out a little bit and kind of beat that stigma out of myself, and force myself to work in a way that I'm maybe uncomfortable. Because that's important. It really is important to not just only stay in the lane that you're comfortable with. Because eventually, like, you will have to, or, you know, you may not have to, but it is healthy to, let's say, try new things and to branch out, rather than, as an artist, to stay in one particular vein. I remember seeing something by Yusuke Murata, I think. Yusuke Murata. I might be the guy who's doing One Punch Man. He's the artist for One Punch Man. He's also a great illustrator. He's also a great sculptor. He's also, I think he's done animation, or he's done like animation level work. Like his artwork is fantastic. I love seeing his stuff. That was like one of the main reasons I got into reading One Punch Man. As you could probably tell, most of the reasons I get into reading comics or manga is because of the art. It used to be like exclusively the story, and sometimes it still is, but if you want me to pick up your comic or your manga, it, like, every time, like, I'll be looking at the artwork first, which is usually like at least 50%, I'd say, of most comic readers. If they don't like the art, they won't, you know, read the story. I could be wrong in that. I know plenty of people that like terrible looking art, or don't mind it, I guess, as much as I do. Leather. That's a little highlights here. This isn't looking as bad as I thought it would, but I do want to edit a little bit of the ink work I'm seeing here. Like, I know this is supposed to be dark, but I think it needs a little, just a little. What if I just got rid of that shape altogether? Is that gonna hurt me? Is that gonna break my brain if I do that? No, that's okay. I just need to paint it a little better. That's not bad. It's not great either. It's the war. It's always the war in the minds for what you will and won't do. I can't tell if I like it or not. It's pretty good. But then, like... So is that... Okay. Okay. We'll bring... we'll bring this stuff that's over here back, I guess. So, I guess... Nope, that's not it. I know how to do this. I'm a talented artist. I just don't remember that sometimes. I guess we'll bring some of those back. Alright. It looks okay. I think I'm gonna throw like a light layer and stuff over top of it. One of the things I also want to do is I want to throw a gradient over top of it to kind of unify some of the colors we've got going on here. So something like this, but it like a hard light. Oh, that doesn't look bad. That's not that bad. Blue, green, silver. Kind of like it. What does soft light on that look like? Soft light looks pretty good. Okay. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and I think I'll leave that alone for right now. I'll come back later when I feel a little disgruntled about it, I'm sure. But for now, I think that'll work. I say as I stare at it with like a little squint in my eye, and I'm just like, you know what you did. Let's play with the moon a little bit. I'm imagining there's probably somebody out there listening to this and not really watching what I'm doing. Which if you are, you know, I mean, do what you want. That's not really my business. But, I can't, like, just the... If you were to only hear my voice but not see what I was doing, I don't imagine really much of anything I'm saying makes sense. At least that's why I'm not working. See, it's like if I'm not ranting or if I'm not talking about stuff like that, I'm over here like, oh, let's play with this, let's try that, you know. And it's like it doesn't quite make sense, does it? I love how all these tiny little details have just really made this moon pop. Isn't moon pop a moon pop? I know moon pie is a thing, but I don't know if moon pop is a... It sounds like it is. I can't remember if it is or not, though. It really sounds like that'd be something you would get like out of an ice cream truck, like a moon pop. Like it's not shaped like a moon or anything like that. It's probably like cheese flavored or something because it's from the 1950s, where it's like apparently the moon was made out of cheese for some reason in some people's minds. Here's the thing. I live in the part of the world where it's like, it's not hard to imagine. Like, I want to be like, ugh, nobody would think that. Nobody would think the moon's made out of cheese. But I live in a part of the world where it's like, I mean, maybe. I can see how they would think that. Some people, you just, you know, they're not right in the head at all. You begin to wonder, you know, when you hear those stories about, you know, kids playing with mercury. You know, mercury used to be sold as like just pure mercury would be sold as a toy. And I'm like, I wonder where some of that went. Because I think I might have located some of the some of the participants in that fad. Right then, let's see if we can get this finished up. Or at least closer to the finish line. So I want these tentacles to have a bit of a different color about them, and I'm not sure what that color is yet. Now in the original animation they're black because they just use black bricks. So I wonder if I can play with maybe making them a bit more blue than purple. Kind of a grayish green as well. That's not bad. Kind of like that. It's such a balancing game because on one hand you want obviously accuracy. On the other hand, you know, you're looking at light and what that does to your colors. And you have to kind of imagine a bit how things will work. And in my case, that's difficult for me because I'm not used to really thinking of light as much as I should probably. And that's just due to the fact that, like, I'm just rather bad at my job, I guess. There we go. Right. This still kind of blends a bit more than I'd like it to, in with the background. Which I guess if I got rid of, wouldn't be that bad. What if I just kind of faded that more? Or got rid of it altogether? What does that look like? It's not bad. I'm confused and conflicted. Looking for the reference that will just really kind of pop this open like a can. That's why you keep books and images and such nearby. I've got an idea, but I'm not sure where I would look for that. I kind of like this. Let me see about this. This is a reference that I'm pulling from some sort of comic book. I don't know which comic. But my thought is, if I can get the background closer to kind of that color, maybe this would flow a little bit better. I mean, it's rather close to that already now, isn't it? In fact, it's kind of looking like this color palette's already in use. So I guess I should just lean more into the blue. Shouldn't I? Or into the... Oh, I kind of like it darker. Not gonna lie. Alright, what if makes me think kind of like a Venom. Nice thing about working digitally is you can like shift your colors on a whim. I feel like I do that a little bit too often, maybe. But I do get a pretty good idea. I generally have an idea of what I want before I sit down to color. Sometimes it just takes a couple of iterations. And so like what I would used to do when I was painting, traditionally, I would do 3 or 4 studies before even starting on the official, the final version of my painting. And often that would really, really help me solidify what I wanted. That way, before I even, you know, committed to mixing the colors on the palette or pulling them out of the box, I guess, or the tube, whatever. I've painted before, I know what paint comes in. I usually painted in watercolor more than I did anything else. But before I was even committed to pulling out what paints I needed, I would have a good idea of what I wanted to do, and even some recipes for how to mix some of the more complex colors, which is absolutely invaluable. I can't decide if I like the more graphic version of this without a background, and we just let the shapes do the talking without really any atmosphere, or if I like it with the background and the whole atmosphere kind of being shaped by the colors and whatnot. I don't know. I do know that this is not part of that shape. It's my signature, it can be separate. And I think I saw this the other day when I was... Yep. Painting about. There we go. The nice thing about recording this is you get to watch it all in one go. Or in bits and bobs as far as shorts are concerned. And I get to take my time. And I can take a day, or heck, I could take a week to give myself some time to observe what I'm doing. And then come back and work more. And all I have to do is just remember to cut. And then splice the footage back together. I like to do it in 1 to 2 sittings. I don't like to spread it out that much. And in general, I don't like to do too much work off camera for these videos either. Oh, well now that's just starting to really make me happy. I love it when that happens. I love sitting down and then suddenly falling in love with the piece again. Each part of the process has the potential to kind of take that away. That excitement and that joy as you work on it, and you start to kind of get nervous as it enters an ugly stage, but just stick with it long enough and eventually it'll usually swing back around to the happy and exciting part of the process. And, you know, you don't want to overwork something, or you don't want to you know, ignore some of the obvious things that you should be doing along the way. You know, just to be like, oh, well, if I keep working on it, eventually I'll like it. You're gonna have to like it at some point. Probably earlier on in, like, the sketching and concept phase. And then, like, fall in love with that idea. And then try to visualize that and try to work towards that as you go. Rather than just kind of hoping that at some point you'll magically like this piece. So here I'm kind of jumping back and forth between some gradients here. I generally don't do this in my official kind of process, I guess you could say. But it seems to be working well for this piece, so I'm not gonna. Why isn't my brush size decreasing? How very odd. Is it increasing or decreasing? Is my keyboard not working? I hope it is. I'm getting no... Oh no. Hold a minute. Okay, well, that was a little bit scary. But the good news is that the keyboard is functioning now. I don't really know why it did that, but it did. So we'll just move on, I guess. Another reason why I wouldn't want to stream. Okay, I've said it a couple of times that I don't want to stream. There are some things that I think would be fun about streaming. I think interacting with people would be fun. I think building kind of things live with people would be fun. But just the fact that, like, I personally don't like watching streams kind of holds me back from that. Like, even people that I like watching work, I don't like watching streams. And I can't explain really why I don't. It's just like there's something about the format that just kind of irks me. And I'm not really sure why. It's that way, but it is. So I don't mind learning some of that stuff. In fact, I've done quite a bit of research into the technical side of streaming and whatnot. Like, I figured out most of streaming. In fact, I had a plan to stream for a while, and then I found out my bandwidth was crap, so streaming wasn't really in the cards. But I think, I don't know, at some point I might try it again, if some circumstances change. But I think it'd be tough keeping up with it. I think I would need somebody to come in and help me keep track of all the things. Especially, like, if I was trying to read comments and draw at the same time, because I'd probably fail at that and wind up not reading anything. So recently I got a lovely package in the mail. I was quite excited to see it. It was the Kraken comic by Kenneth Rocafort. And if you've never heard of Kenneth Rocafort or Kraken, Kenneth Rocafort is a amazing artist. He used to work for, I suppose he still works, I'm sure in some capacity with his freelance stuff, for Image Comics, specifically Top Cow. So he was under Mark Silvestri, one of my favorite artists. And he did a lot of the work for, was it Cyberforce? Or Hunter Killer? I think it was Hunter Killer, and then I think he did the Cyberforce Hunter Killer crossover, I know. But those comic lines had a very unique style about them that I remember seeing and was very, very excited by. I didn't originally see them in Image Comics. I saw them when it was coming out for the Red Hood and the Outlaws comic. And, you know, I really like the art in that series. I liked how the characters were kind of designed. I liked how the faces especially were painted. But I think the colors were some of the things that really stood out to me in those. And it was Kenneth Rockefeller's work. I believe he did the colors as well. I could be wrong. If it's not, then I'll put up whoever did the colors right here. He did a couple more comics and designs and stuff for DC Comics, I know. I don't know if he ever did any Marvel work, but eventually he started doing his own comic known as Kraken. And Kraken's a sci-fi fantasy comic. And it's rather neat because it's like, first of all, any indie comic is going to be very kind of different from what you're going to read from something that is officially licensed. And not just like in a quality way. I think with Kenneth Rockefeller, his quality is very, very high when it comes to his work. Like, I love getting the books because it's like getting an art book. It's very, very, you know, wild and fun and exciting to read. But at the same time, it's different because you can tell the amount of freedom he has with the story to kind of do whatever he wants. And I won't say that I understand completely everything that's happening in Kraken right now, because for certain there's a lot of things going on. But he's done three comics, 3 issues, I should say, or volumes, however he wants to call it, on Kickstarter, quite successfully. And I think it's safe to say he'll be doing a 4th. So I'm happy and excited to see that come up. And if you've never read Kraken, go follow Kenneth Rockefeller on Indiegogo. He's not sponsoring me to say this. I wish he was. He's not. But yeah, go follow him on Indiegogo and turn on your notifications so that when he releases the 4th one, usually what he does is he also has the previous volumes for sale again, and sometimes even some exclusive new covers, which I'm not big into collecting other covers, but he has some really pretty work and neat covers that, you know, maybe you'll want to add to your collection, or maybe even buy some of the other versions of the comics, even if you have some of the previous chapters to Kraken. Yeah, I read that last night, finally, after it came to my house, probably about 2-3 days ago. And I thought it was so fun and unique compared to like what I've seen before in other comics. And it's just, I don't know, it's really refreshing to see that and to read that on, in a comic that isn't, a comic that's not really held back by its creators and such. I remember there's a fight scene right in the middle of the issue that I was reading, and it was just this pure kind of 80s 90s violence, which is, in comics that's what happens, and I really enjoyed it. And I was like, oh man, I miss these kind of fights where it's just like, a bunch of little, like, I think they were called noblins or noblins or something. These little, like, annoying little creatures are attacking the hero, so he just like has to slice them up with swords, and it's like that kind of stuff is just fun, and I enjoy seeing that still in the making, rather than kind of falling by the wayside and falling out of style. I don't think that falls out of style, and I think case in point, you can see a lot of movies and a lot of other media that when they go back to that simple style that supposedly was, you know, is no longer in vogue, like suddenly, you know, those things do very, very well. Like, you know, look at John Wick. John Wick is like some of the simplest storytelling you can see, where it's just man gets angry that his dog and wife is dead, and it works. And I don't know, I find it unfortunate that people think that that kind of storytelling can't be happen anymore. And it's cool that Kenneth Rockerford is really he's been a very big inspiration for me to get back into doing comics, because like as soon as I finish it, I'm like, oh man, I want to make a comic now. I want to make, you know, something of my own, put it on Kickstarter. Now it's going to be a while before I get one of my comics on Kickstarter. I do have a comic in mind that I would like to get there, the Witchborn comic. I would like to get that in a little bit more of a polished state, I feel like, and I've talked about this before, but when I worked on it initially, it was kind of one of those projects that I made essentially to keep myself from going crazy. And that literally was just, you know, what was going on. I was just not in a great space, and I needed something to work on. But now that I've actually, you know, taken the time and done a comic, I want to be able to make, you know, the Witchborn comic everything that it can be, rather than just have it be something that I made to keep myself busy. So there's going to be a bit of changes with that, and I may have already made a video by the time this releases explaining what I want to do with it, but I want to try to put my best work into that project. And so that's going to require some things are going to have to move forward, and some things are going to have to move back, which is unfortunate, but, you know, you don't wake up pro. You don't even wake up indie. Yeah, so I was quite impressed with Broken 3. I'd like to see more, and I'm excited because I think, like, we're getting, I forget when he announced Broken 3 last, because I started with Broken 2 because I saw it and I really like the art, and it's kind of what got me started on, it's actually what kind of led me to some of the things from Top Cow. So I'm hoping that his announcement for Broken 4 and that Kickstarter will launch soon, so then I can support that. And then wait impatiently for it, like about a year, because he, as I understand it, he's doing the whole thing himself. So it takes a year for that to happen, which is unfortunate, but that's how it is when you do indie projects, when you support small creators like that. You do have to wait a bit for some of the goodies. What I would love for, you know, to happen to the Groken line, though, would be if it was at the end of it, or at least like after like a couple of issues, he could get it collected into a larger volume. Because I know I would pay for that. Just to have the whole story in one gigantic book. But that's kind of like, I don't know if that's just a me thing or not. Because I know some people, like, they really like collecting comics like they used to, you know, back in the day. Because, you know, back in the day it was all trade paperbacks and, or not trade paperbacks, they were more, they were just the comic books themselves, the single issues. And I never grew up in that era. I never collected single issues because I didn't really like the idea of collecting single issues, because I figured that they would like really deteriorate and they just felt cheap to me. So I never liked single issues. Even as a kid, I remember that was just something that I was like, eh. If I saw a single issue comic at like a yard sale or something, because that's where I would get most of my literature. Yes, I was not a peruser of bookstores at that point, because there wasn't really a bookstore in my area. Yeah, if there was a single issue, so I wouldn't pick it up. Wasn't that? And even today, like, I'll be walking around and my family sometimes they'll try to help me, you know, collect things as we go, and they're like, oh, here's a Superman, or here's a this or other, and I'll look at it. I think it's still interesting, but I think I still just really like the trade paperback or the large omnibus. Is something that I greatly enjoy reading and looking at. I'm not as big of a fan of the old kind of papery, pulpy. I feel like every time I pick it up, it's just like it ages. I can feel, like, you know, my hand oil's just beginning to deteriorate the page, and I really don't like it. I don't like how that feels. I had somebody send me, I purchased some comic books from them, trade paperbacks, and they're like, oh, hey, yeah, we're just cleaning this out. It'd be cool if we just send you some more stuff that we've got in the closet. I was like, yeah, sure. And I got a lot of trade paperbacks from them, and I could tell that they had been well used. And that's fine. Like, I don't begrudge them that at all. I thought that was it was very neat of them to add that into my order or my purchase of comics from them. But at the same time, like, they're just kind of sitting on my shelf. I can't really, like, store them in any way. And I've seen where people, like, they put them in boxes and whatnot. You can't display them. And that also bothers me. Like, I can't put them on my shelf with all the rest of my comics. All the rest of my books. And it's just like, I don't know. Like, it does feel a lot just cheaper to me, and I get it. I'm not gonna besmirch anyone for saying I'm wrong, because I probably am in some way or the other, disrespecting, like, the original method of distribution for comics. But I don't know. I have my preferences, and obviously other people have theirs. Personally, not a big fan of trade paperbacks. Or, I am a fan of trade paperbacks. Although, I will say, an odd thing, I don't really like hardcovers. I don't know why, but, like, hardcover comics just don't. And I think it goes back to, like, when I was a kid, I used to get, like, trade paperbacks from the library. So I'm used to that feeling for when I want to read comics, as opposed to when I pick up a hardcover book, I don't expect it to be a comic inside. And at first I thought I was just, you know, that wasn't the case. I thought, you know, whatever. But then I picked up I think it was the Batman and the Beyond the White Knight by Sean Gordon Murphy, which was a pretty good comic. And but like it was hardcover as opposed to the other two that I had in the series, which were softcover. And immediately, like, I felt different every time I picked it up and I read it. And I don't know, it wasn't the same feeling that I had when I was reading the other ones. And it did, like, kind of affect my mood when I was going to read that comic. It's just like, why is this what bothers me? I don't know. I can't explain it. But it's also like, it's different with certain stories, I guess. Like with manga, I've seen like the Vinland Saga hardcover. I'm like, yes, that. I want that in hardcover. That's amazing. But not with Western comics for some reason. Or at least all the Western comics I picked up. Maybe it's just the subject or the story. I don't know. Although, what was it that I saw? Oh, the other thing that I think I've noticed recently that like has caused me to buy books is if they've got like a nice texture on the comic cover. So I picked up a manga recently, or not recently, it was several months ago, but recently in my collecting. So I'd say it's one of the more interesting like covers I've ever picked up, because I remember like just going through the shelves and I saw the title and I reached to pick it up to see what it was about, and it's got this texture on it. I don't know like how to describe it, but it's almost like a pleasant sandpaper. I don't even know what it's. Do I have it? Oh, it's right over there. Hold on. Yeah, so the Go With the Clouds. Go With the Clouds North by Northwest. I don't recommend this book just because, like, as far as the story goes, actually I don't remember what the story is. I just remember I didn't care for it. Of course, then it's just volume 1. I guess it could get better in the next story. I don't mean to like pull out this book and immediately insult it, but like the cover, I don't know if you can hear that, but like that's the feeling of the cover. It's not smooth at all. It's got like a nice little texture to it. And I have no idea how they did that. Again, I didn't mean to insult the artist or anybody by saying I didn't like the book. I think like the art's good. I think some of the story is alright. I don't know. I might reread it. I just remember like I picked it up and I was just like, huh, the cover's better than the interior. Again, I didn't mean to insult. But yeah, like I purely picked this up. I didn't read anything inside of it. I just got it because I was like, oh, it feels so nice. And even now, like I can't stop doing that. Is that capturing at all? Here's some ASMR. There you go. That's the weirdest thing I've ever done. Just pull out a book and rub its cover. But honestly, it's like sometimes that's like what has encouraged me to buy books, is just like how they feel. I had a teacher in a publishing class that I took, and she had like a sample book of all the different types of paper that you could get, all the different weights and such. And at first I thought it was like, that's the nerdiest thing I've ever seen. And then like I got the book because we were passing it around, and it was like so satisfying to like feel the difference in like weight and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, and I kind of got it. I wish I could get one of those, but I think it costs like $50, or like way more than I want for just like a book that is essentially just sensory. I don't know, maybe it'd be worth it. Almost like it'd be worth it if I trashed this layer here, because it's kind of not doing anything. Yep, trash. I don't know, I kind of like it without the I kind of like it without the the background right now. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna make a duplicate of this actually. What I want to do here is merge all this and then get rid of the saturation. Maybe try something like that. Ooh. That's kind of cool. Cool if there's more of a glow there. Like if I took the watercolor brush, just kind of drop the opacity a bit. I'm finding that a lot of my backgrounds are leaning more towards the abstract. And I find that from like my love of the impressionistic artists, like a lot of the watercolorists that I studied, like Yoshitsu Bukovic, and I like some of Monet's work. There's another painter who I'm struggling to think of right at the moment. But yeah, that's kind of, I think, what's mostly influenced a lot of my work as far as backgrounds go recently. I'd like to keep it minimalistic like this. But I want that kind of white background because I really think that just makes the piece pop. I don't know, I might talk to the client about that, but I think what we're gonna do, first and foremost, pardon, I want to go through and I want to add a gradient over top of some of what we've done here. And the reason I'm doing that is to kind of promote a little more color in the work. But like I'll try to keep it as subtle as possible, but it also gives it like a bit of harmony. So here I can already see I want to add a little bit more highlights. So I might go in with an overlay and then a soft brush. It's like kind of this. Let me just go over it lightly. Again, a lot of the lighting work is being done by the ink, which is lovely because I don't have to fuss over all of everything here. But a lot of the form is also being described by the ink, so I want to make sure I follow that with the light and the hints that I give this piece. So over top of this, we're gonna go ahead and boost this blue a little bit. A bit of a linear dodge. bit of cooler light than I would have liked. I'm trying to keep that in mind, but quite bad at this. It's no excuse for me to try to be bad at it, of course. Have to get over it and try anyway. Oh, Discord. Oh, get a little bit of underglow there. That's nice. That's nice. I like that. Overdo it now. Just want a nice bit of green influencing some of the highlights. I'd like a bit more red too. There we go. In fact, why don't I give a bit of an erase to this? Here, there. Give it a bit more pop. That's good. That's good indeed. Right. I want this to have a single hard line of just wet highlight. So a lot of times with like metallic or things that are a little more liquidy, we'll have this solid line of reflection that'll just show off the, in this case, the gooiness, the glorpiness of the tentacle here. Very nice. Very nice. I wish I was a better painter so I could see this kind of stuff earlier and not have to slave over it. Every now and then I get a little glimpse of where I'm going and some of the skill that is beginning to show itself, and I just get excited because it means that like what I like here I'll love later, and eventually I'll get to the point where this just becomes natural and normal and I'll have to find something new to get excited about, and that's just great. That's fine by me. Excited to see that, and I'm excited to experience it. It's that journey. You've got to learn to love that journey. From when you're, just starting out in a notebook drawing eyeballs and anime faces, to eventually where you're fussing over the gooiness of your Kraken's tentacles as he fights a pirate. It's that kind of perspective you got to keep in mind, and that idea of progression that's so important. I didn't do that when I started out, and it was so utterly painful to try to get better and to try to force myself to keep going when all I would look at is the failures and the setbacks and whatnot. But this is what you want to see. This is what you want to be able to get to. It's this level of probably a bit of dopamine, something to scratch that itch that I think that all artists have, to feel that creativity and that excitement in knowing that you've created, and that fulfillment of a little bit of the purpose you feel as a human to create and to be creative and to be excited. You know, that's really, really a special part of what I get to do and what any artist gets to do, whether or not they've got a silly camera in front of them or not. I don't think you need to be a YouTuber to enjoy this kind of level of excitement and joy that comes from creation. Alright, all of this is getting grouped into a folder known as Kraken. I'm going to duplicate this group. I'm going to merge the group, and I'm going to play with the levels a little bit. Oh, there's my levels bar. Where did it go? Well, why did you disappear on me? Come here. Good. Let's throw a bit of a dodge on it. So grab some color dodge. Maybe hard light. We'll see how I like this. Ross Draws is always reaching for the color dodge. And while I like it, I think I like hard light a little bit more. I think hard light always has a bit more of a happy place in my book, in my experience. To each their own. Of course, then I don't paint very many glowy happy pieces. Right. Yeah, I think I'd like it better without. Alright then, on to the character. So this is good to go. We'll give it a seafoam. Alright, the pirate. Let's get him perched here. Pirate. And let's make him yellow. So then over top of this, we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a bit of a lighter layer. So I want to boost some of these colors just a bit more. So the highlights over here on the coat need to go up. I generally find that when it comes to painting, I always need to boost highlights because I go quite dark. Don't know why that is. Don't know why I like that. It happens to be in my process. I will always go a bit darker than needed. Seems to be my fate. Still like what we did with the skin. I don't think I need to touch that up too much. It's not too terribly bad. I don't hate it. And that's big for me. over this. Pick a gradient that I like. Something like that, and then swap it over to a layer style that I think would do well. I'd like to see a bit more unification amongst the colors of this. So I think this gradient map would be handy to have. Unless, of course, it's just terrible. Oh, the blue's pretty nice. If I could have this but less intense. I like this. Alright. It's a little too matchy with the background. I keep zooming out because I want to see what it looks like overall. Should probably explain that. Tell you what, let's do a little bit of cloud work back here. Or do something a little more abstract. Yeah. I kind of like that. Oh, that makes me happy. A rare thing sometimes. For me to be this happy and excited about a project this far in. Alright, if we do this, I need him to pop more. Which means probably no gradient of that, unless... Well, that does nothing. Yeah, it's not working. Alright, let's make a duplicate. Let's merge the layers. Let's bump this. Trying to get a good balance here. Sorry, I forgot to talk. Trying to get a good balance here between the darks and the lights. And I don't want the pants to completely disappear. But I also don't want to over-render them, so... I don't know, I still kind of like it when I don't have as much background. I think I'm just gonna have to go with that. Alright, so I'm going to hide the background white. I'm gonna come up here and Control Alt Shift E, which will copy everything onto one layer. So that's just the one layer is now completely flattened. Make a group for all the paint stuff that I've been working on. Hide that. So that is the entire painting right there. I'm going to make a duplicate. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to hit auto tone. And then I'm going to hit auto contrast. Then auto color. And usually auto color turns into some sort of nightmare. So I'll usually undo that. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start playing with the overall levels just to give it a little bit more juice. I'm going to go in with a brush and I'm going to give a little bit more highlight to some of the areas that I like. So here, the kind of greenish murky glow that we're getting here, I want to give just a wee bit more, keeping in mind that my inking layers are now flattened, and if that becomes a problem I can just duplicate the ink layers and put it back on top. I just want to paint a little bit over top of them, just like that. A little bit of, yeah. That extra nice, just yeesh. Makes it look a little bit more how I want it to. Here, I want to go a little bit darker. Some of that. Good, skin looks good. It's not too bad. I might inject a little bit of red in there. Alright. Now I'm going to Alt Shift E again, have all of those layers. And then I'm going to try throwing a gradient on top. Just to give it a little bit of extra coordination with our color schemes and whatnot. I would like to have a little bit more blue throughout, I think. Not a lot, just a little bit. That's actually not that bad. Hard like overlays not bad. Soft lights not bad. Yeah. Alright, that's not bad. So this is without, although I like the warm moon. I might edit this a little bit here. Go with a little bit more warm take on the moon. There we go. There it is. That's looking better. Alright. So now we'll Shift D again. Then I'm going to hop over into Image, Auto Tone, Auto Contrast, Auto Color, which messes everything up, so we're going to undo that. I'm going to save it. And I think I'm happy with this. So let's go into preview mode. And there we have it. I really like how this turned out. I thought I wasn't, and I'm pleasantly surprised. So, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have enjoyed seeing the whole process of this from start to finish. Thank you if you've watched from beginning to end, of course, or if you've just watched this one. Either way, I hope that you go out there and you make something of your own. Hopefully this has maybe been a bit of a chill moment for you, or something to watch while you work on your own things. I'm going to be making more of these videos in the future, so until then, go make something awesome.